Hello there, fellow glue sniffers and sprue snippers. Welcome back to Blitzcrank Modelworks. I'm Bob. You know me as Darkland on the forums. How's it going? So I've had a couple of requests to do some figure painting, some very simple, down and dirty figure painting. A week or so ago, I posted pictures of the figures I'm doing for the Tamiya Martyr for that 70s build, and these are the two faces. Now these do not offer any type of shading. They're very, very basically done. This is a style that was kind of popularized back in the 80s and early 90s for people. They just wanted to put figures with their kits. The figures were just kind of almost an afterthought, just to kind of give it some human context. You can tell the skin tones are too different. I did that on purpose. They are a bit rougher than I thought they would turn out because I forgot one step that I will show you when I demonstrate this, why it's important to do it the way it is. But again, this is very simple, very easy, down and dirty ways to do some figure painting. You know, if you're not looking at something that's going to be show worthy, I guess it depends on what shows you go to. Or you know, you just don't want to spend the time doing all the shading and whatnot. So I've done another sample. This is an old Italy figure, but he had quite a bit of character, and this one turned out quite a bit nicer. He's still kind of shiny. He would normally have a dull coat thrown over top. Yes, there's a big honking mold seam there. I didn't clean it off for the purposes of the demo. Let's see if we got a little bit of shadowing underneath. So what you're going to need to do this, you are going to need, and this is what I prefer, Tamiya flat flesh. Normally looks pretty horrible. Another thing you need to do, well actually this is what it looks like sprayed on. This is just Tamiya flesh. This is a really old Tamiya figure. Guess I was going to cut his hat off or something, but the sculpting on the face isn't too bad for the age. This is 70s, early 70s. But this is just the straight Tamiya airbrushed on. And we have another figure. This is an even older one. There is not a lot of detail on this figure. This is really old. I think this is out of their early observation set, I think. Now, if you want to see shiny, because I also used Pledge floor polish over top of this guy. This is what makes it important. I did not do this to these guys, and that's why their faces look so much rougher versus this guy, whose the detailing looks a lot smoother. Now that, in addition, that Tamiya figures of that age were kind of on the rough side to begin with. So I'm going to show you first on the uncoated one, and then on the coated one. So this is going to take a little bit of time. I may fast forward through it a little bit. So what do you need to do this? You need a decent quality flat brush. For our purposes, you could even get some of the flats that Walmart sells or dollar store stuff. I do this with artist oils. That is an important part. And you will need yellow ochre. You'll need raw umber. You'll need burnt sienna. And depending on the skin tone, other skin tones you want to do, you might want to do some black and white. You may even want to get some red and some yellow. Now these are very, very bright. These will adjust the colors just a tiny little bit. But for the purposes of the demo, I'm just going to use these three. So we're just going to take out roughly one gob, more or less equal of each. I don't know how well this is going to work on this piece of paper. And yellow ochre. your clean brush. And I should mention that you also need some type of enamel paint thinner, because you're going to have to clean your brush off. Now, I call this a reverse dry brush technique. Some guys might call it a smudge technique. I don't know what it's really called. I just call it the reverse dry brush. So you just mix the whole works up, mash it in really well. And if you want to do this with one brush and then have a different brush to paint or to remove the paint with, that's fine too. Now, to do this, where are we here? I'm not going to be able to do it, so you just want to gob everything right on. And just make sure you get it in everywhere. Don't worry, it's important that you do this first and you don't do the uniform first. And because this one's got basically a seal coat on it, we can do this one without having to let it sit and worry about it soaking into the paint. You will see how much darker the Tamiya flesh gets. So you can use, just cleaning the brush here, you can use the enamel thinner if you like. I use odorless paint thinner to clean. Or if you really want to speed things up and you're not overly concerned about the brush, you can actually use acetone, which is what I'm using here to help speed things up, because the brush will dry that much faster. So the brush is now dry. So we're going to go for this guy, and you're using oils because it will take much longer than acrylics to set up. So you have lots of time to do this. But as you remove it, it dries faster and faster. So once you're done, you still have lots of time. But once you're done, the paint will dry quite a bit faster. So basically you just want to do it like you're dry brushing, except you're reversing. There we go. You can kind of see how now at first you're doing it just like dry brushing. You're doing it fairly heavy. You want to take most of it off. I even knew people back in the day that would remove the paint, just tissue, just that was real down and dirty stuff. And then doing eyes and hair and that is a whole different ball game. So, and you kind of go lighter. I'm still going fairly heavy. There's a lot to remove here. But you can see it's kind of stained the Tamiya flesh, so we could actually go on quite a bit lighter. But one thing that I noticed that a lot of guys do is they make the figures quite light for complexion, and you got to remember that soldiers, infantry in particular, are out in the sun, out in the weather a lot. So they're tanned. You know, even us very white Anglo guys get a pretty decent tan on us. Just trying to angle this so I can see it behind the camera here. And this guy's actually turning out not too shabby, considering that it's just the plain overcoat. So that's what we got. Focus. There we go. So I said, this is very simple, down and dirty. If you wanted to, you know, add some red or some white to the cheeks, to the highlights, and then just kind of lightly dab it in to blend it. And I mean, you're putting in like a tiny little bit off the end of a toothpick. You can do that. That does give some color variation. This is rather a monochromatic look. Now if you get to, we pretty much got off what I think we're going to get. It doesn't look like too much more is going to come off. So we'll do one last thorough cleaning in acetone. And for those that say acetone destroys your brushes, this is an HK series brush. This was a white at one time, but I've had this thing for years, and basically all I clean this in is acetone. So now we're going to switch to our enamel paint thinner. Now you don't want to use it just like this. You want to take your cloth and you want to basically, like you're dry brushing, you want to get almost all of it out. So there's just, yeah, I can just see a sheen, and then very, very lightly. The good thing of this is you can always start all over. Very, very lightly, yeah, and it's streaking. So I don't have, I gotta get a lot more off. See where we are there. Now there is some streaking, and that's okay, because then we just clean the brush off in acetone to get all the enamel thinner off. Normally I have a cloth on my leg I use for this. So this is nothing, there's no enamel thinner left on it, and now you can just blend. And I would call him pretty much done. Nothing fancy, nothing special, but it sure looks better than flat flesh. And it's a lot easier than doing all the feathering and shading and that with all the different colors. Although this is a very good first step to get you into that if that's the road you want to go down. So now this is the one with the Tamiya flat flesh and excuse me, and the Pledge floor polish. So, and this guy, like there, I don't know if you can still even see, didn't really do much. There is really nothing for expression. The guy looks like a mannequin. It's horrible, horrible. But we'll see if this can bring him to life a little bit without making him look like a zombie. He's kind of got that dead look on him. The problem with using a figure face that is so poorly sculpted like this, there's really no features. So this type of technique on this type of figure is, you'll get very limited results. It's again certainly better than just doing the flesh. But it's certainly a lot better than just leaving it. And I went a little bit dark with the oils. I could have blended in a fair bit of white, maybe a tad bit of yellow just to lighten it up a bit. It doesn't have to be this dark. But again, if you have like an assembly line of figures, you can plow through figures in a big hurry doing it this way. Just seems a little harsh by his eyes there. And maybe feather it in just with short, light little dabs. You don't want to take a lot of it off, you just kind of want to soften the edges. And I would pretty much call this guy done, actually, for what you're going to get out of it. And even if you didn't do the eyes, this is a heck of a lot better than just doing the flat Tamiya flesh. I've tried it with oils, you do definitely have to put in an acrylic barrier or a lacquer barrier. Otherwise, the paint thinner, the paint will, it could lift your original paint. So, where's original? So those are our three guys, our three amigos. And you could lighten the guy on the left a bit more. I probably would if I was actually going to bother using him. But it's a pretty horrible looking figure, pretty deadpan, no real character to it. But so that's what you can get. Very simple. Basically, you're using three colors of oils, and you don't have to get tubes this big. You can get tubes much smaller. What I do find is with oil paint selection, good quality stuff. My stuff is primarily Grumbacher, some Stephenson. Don't know where I picked that up, and Winsor & Newton. I started switching over to Winsor & Newton quite a while ago, but as you can tell, there's lots in here, lifetime supply. You got to watch when you're doing stuff on this kind of scale, because sometimes you'll get oil paints that actually have chunks of pigment in them, and it'll almost look like the guys have what am I thinking, measles. You'll get little dots. I've seen that especially with the burnt sienna. It was really bad. I can't remember what brand it was, but that's it. Other than doing the hair, letting them dry, doing the hair, doing the eyes, which is really important. Something that I can show you, but there's a lot of practice that has to be done to get eyes right, and I'm still far from doing a decent job. This guy's pretty good. I mean, he's got a decent expression on his face. The eyes turned out. The driver I'm not overly happy with, but he's okay too. And then, actually, if you'll excuse me, I just see a figure sitting way over my workbench. Excuse me while I bang my lights all over the place. This is an old Warriors figure I had done years ago. And same technique with that face. A little bit of dust on him. Off. So same idea with that face. So that's a real quick, hopefully it's real quick, down and dirty. It's pretty simplistic. I know I kind of brushed through it really fast, but that's the kind of results you can get your first time out. I mean, take your time, if you're unsure of yourself, just go to the dollar bin at the hobby store if you got one, and get just a crappy set of figures and practice. If you want, you can, if you have an airbrush, you can actually airbrush the Tamiya on, instead of using a Tamiya thinner or isopropyl alcohol. Use lacquer thinner, 50-50 mix of lacquer thinner, 1-to-1 ratio. And then if this doesn't work, you can use the paint thinner, and you can pretty much peel it all straight off. Okay, so again, nice simple basic figure painting tutorial. Again, this is Bob from Blitzkrieg Model Works. Hope you enjoyed the video. Like and subscribe if you haven't already, and any questions or constructive comments in the comment section below. Thank you very much. Appreciate you watching.